Hello, good evening, and welcome to Monkeys with Fire. How's everybody tonight? Hope you're all well. So then, this evening we're going to take another look at a TTRPG, and tonight's game we're going to be looking at Gran Meccanismo from Osprey Games. This is a Clockpunk role-playing in Da Vinci's Florence. An alternate reality Italy where Leonardo da Vinci, his fantastical designs weren't just on paper, they actually became a reality. So this is quite exciting. It's a novel, an interesting setting, and we're going to take a look and see how the game is made. Of course, as always, we'll point out that there may be some spoilers as we go through. So if we get anywhere close to an example adventure, then I'll put the screen up just for those who do want to actually play the adventure. They can stop watching at that point. And of course, if you do have any questions, please do put them into the chat or leave a comment, and I will do my best to answer those for you. As always, my thanks to Osprey Games for providing a copy of Gran Meccanismo for us to take a look through this evening. And if you do enjoy the content, please do like and subscribe to the channel. It's very much appreciated. All right then, let's go to the table and take a look. Okay, here we go. Let's read the text on the back, eh? So, it is the year of our Lord 1510, and one has to wonder how differently history could have played out if Niccolo Machiavelli, the military commissioner of the Republic of Florence, had not understood the true scale of Leonardo da Vinci's genius. In such a world, the visionary might simply have wasted his time painting portraits of women and doodling in a sketchbook. Instead, he unleashed a technological revolution where primitive computers decorated with delicately painted cupids run on water clocks, spring-powered tanks whir across the battlefield, cannons thunder from their flanks, and gliders flit across the perfectly blue Tuscan skies. Gran Meccanismo is a role-playing game of swashbuckling adventure in a Renaissance Italy where Florence's winding alleys play host to spies, scholars, and sellswords alike. Players are nobles, mercenaries, inventors, and artisans who may find themselves crossing wits with Machiavelli, avoiding the dangerous charms of Lucretia Borgia, or hearing Christopher Columbus tell tales of the new world he has discovered. Exciting stuff, and I think I got all the names correct. That, of course, is always the very first challenge. Okay, so as we have come accustomed with Osprey Games, their books are incredibly well produced. It's a nice hardback cover. The paper is of good stock. There's a little bit of gloss on the pages and certainly on the cover, as you can see, but it's very easy to read. The text is nice and clear, which I find is definitely beneficial. Not too small, just enough. And we do have some really nice pieces of artwork dotted throughout the book. Okay, let's jump to the front. We have our table of contents, what we're looking at, a brief introduction, then summary of the world of Gran Meccanismo. There's quite a lot to that. A lot of this book is dedicated to educating both player and games master all about this new alternate reality Florence, Italy, and Europe. We then have a section on briefing us on the game, creating our character, the rules, and then the art of the guide. The guide is the name for the game master in this particular game. And then we have an appendix and a character sheet right at the end. So we have an introduction setting the scene of the game, but then also telling us about the actual role-playing system. So welcome to Gran Meccanismo, a complete and absorbing game to play with your friends in this fantastical alternate history. Gran Meccanismo is a type of game known as a tabletop or pen and paper role-playing game using simple and intuitive tripod game engine set created by Graham Spearing. I'm not familiar with that particular role-playing set, so if you are, put a comment in the chat. Let us know what game you actually played using that game engine and what your experience was like. But this is the important part. It is essentially a social game of conversation and imagination, using descriptive phrases and translating them directly into play by giving the phrase a value, which is converted into a number of six-sided dice that you throw. And that is the interesting bit for me. As I've gone through this game, it's a system that I haven't experienced before, and I found it quite unique. Maybe others in the chat, maybe you've experienced a tripod game, and that being the case, you're accustomed to it. But yes, for me, that was definitely a different experience. And then basically it goes through a little bit more, but it says here particular features of Gran. I've got to be careful. I keep on saying grand, but it's not. Gran Meccanismo are a unique setting, bringing many of the tropes and dilemmas of the cyberpunk genre to a rather different and novel world. Free-flowing character creation guidelines allow you to describe your alter ego in the game and use those descriptions as traits. We'll come back to that one. This is a dice building game. Gran Meccanismo requires additional six-sided dice to play, and lots of them, and indeed you do. Describe what your character is doing and make use of as many advantages as you can to build up a large hand or pool of dice as possible. Roll your dice, count up your successes, the highest total wins. And then instead of numerous complicated rules, Gran Meccanismo provides storytelling opportunities that are translated into challenges. The game is meant to encourage players to give vivid descriptions that build a shared character-focused story. Create goals for your character and drive them to succeed, playing your part in creating a fun and immersive experience for everyone. So, for me, right off the bat, I found this very different, which was very interesting as I went through it, and maybe a little bit challenging at first. But we'll go through that as we go through the book. So it goes through and it tells you what you might typically need for a game. If you have played a couple of role-playing games, you will have a good idea of this type of introduction. And then we jump straight on into explaining what the world of Gran Meccanismo is all about. And this is really cool. If you enjoy your history, if you enjoy, there's a TV series on Apple called For All Mankind, and I know that is completely hundreds of years into the future, but hopefully it kind of gives you an idea, if you're familiar with that show, where it takes one aspect and then just goes into that alternate timeline. And this is what this game does. So as we described from the back there of the book, Da Vinci's inventions, as opposed to them just being designs on paper, have actually become a reality. And how would that affect the Renaissance? How would it affect Italy? How would it affect the rest of the world? And this is what this section explains. And so it really is a good read. If you like your history, you're going to enjoy this. It details all about Italy as a country back in, I think it was 1510, wasn't it? This is where the game is set. In fact, there we go, 1510. And of course, you can effectively play anywhere in Italy, and potentially even beyond that. We get details on some of the key cities where your players may go and venture. But I like these guides notes that we have the description, and then this is putting it into more useful information for the actual GM to absorb. So, whilst games need not be set in Florence, the city is the axis on which the world of Gran Meccanismo turns, the source of its weird and wonderful clockpunk gizmos, the disabling factor driving trade wars, social revolution, religious debate, and bloody conflict. If the cyberpunk fantasies we know well tend to be about rain, neon, and video adverts, Japanese script and skyscrapers, then this clockpunk aesthetic is sunlit and Italian, defined by clacking water-driven computers in finely etched bronze, crude steam engines alongside ox carts, elegant plazos suddenly sprouting semaphore towers, and erratic, quite possibly explosive, new inventions decorated with cherubs and gargoyles. Very descriptive, I like it. And it does make a mention that if you were to venture to Da Vinci's workshop, it would seem like a 16th century version of Q's department in a James Bond movie. That's great. You can instantly visualize it, can't you? We have details then on Rome. And again, we have our little guide notes. Venice. Oh, Venice would be great. Some games set during Carnival. Milan. North of Italy. Talks about the opium trade. But Milan. Genoa, Naples. So we're getting all of the major cities here, and then quick summary of some of the other main cities that might be of interest. I feel that this is the type of game that you can quite happily sit down on a Sunday afternoon and just read your way through it. You're learning a game, but you're also learning a little bit about history, even if it is an alternate version. We have Europe then, and detailing the main players in Europe at that time. France, Spain, England. The Holy Roman Empire. Malta and the Order of St. John. And then, as it says, further afield. So in fact, there's a lot of area covered here. We got the Ottoman Empire. We have Africa. So, quite a bit. Again, if you do like your history, maybe you might want to set your game somewhere else. But Florence is definitely the focal point. And so it goes into more detail about Florence. And we get a little bit of a call out on Machiavelli. There is a fantastic series called The Borgias. It's well worth watching, and that would help set this and give you ideas of the type of scenarios and situations and setting that you might want to incorporate into your games. It's been a while since I've watched it, but I'm sure you can find it somewhere to stream. So we've got a section here on the new science. This is a time of new science. It was Machiavelli who saw the potential in the tortured genius of Leonardo da Vinci. Da Vinci had been employed by Milan's... Oh gosh, that's an Italian name I can't say. Ludovico? We'll stay with that. That's as far as I'm going. So basically, he set him up as set up a shop as an artist, but Machiavelli happened to glance at some of his fanciful designs and saw in them not just a republic's survival, but its future. So Leonardo has been pumping out all these amazing inventions, and of course this has radically changed Florence. And these inventions, of course, have improved people's ways of life, but there are those that, of course, think that these inventions are produce of the devil. Of course, with Italy at that time being, of course, a very, very religious country, they would find this new science to be something to be potentially feared. It might be dangerous. And this, of course, can cause conflict between factions. We then have some details on, well, what is the Gran Meccanismo? And we have the guide notes. You get to decide what the Gran Meccanismo is. Is it a weird piece of background science? A weapon at Florence's disposal? A secret weakness that will lead to disaster as people depend too much on it? Or a virtual intelligence on the brink of becoming self-aware? It could be any of these things. So that's interesting. That it essentially, it's your, I guess it's your MacGuffin, isn't it? It can be whatever you need it to be. Just, you know, it's something futuristic, but take it back to the 16th century. So make it steam, water powered, and wooden. And yeah, you've got something to work with. We get a map of Florence with major locations detailed. And we've got one of the flying machines here. That's cool. And then we start to break down Florence quarter by quarter. We go into details on what everyday life was like, what the roles of men and women. Now, they do point out here that because this is an alternate reality, that you do not need to stay to what history depicts the roles of men and women at that time were. And of course you can go far beyond that. I think it does say here, medieval notions of a man's and a woman's roles are just beginning to be questioned and subverted, although in the main assumption is that the woman's primary function is to be a wife and mother, and in the case of the aristocracy, married off for the good of the dynasty. But even in this age of dowries, family allegiances, and ruthless pragmatism, there is still a role for love and respect within marriage. However, the times, especially with the accelerating social change generated first by the Renaissance and then by new science, are seeing steadily greater options for women looking beyond their traditional roles. So, you don't have to stick to what history what happened in history. You can make the game your own, and that's good. You'll see later on, I created a character, and in fact, actually, I'm leaning into a little bit of the more accurate sort of side, but having some fun with it. You'll see when I share my character. What we got? Business, banking and credit, financial crime, war and weapons. Little call-outs here on a possible idea for a story. Details on how to travel between the main cities. How many miles? Traveling by water or by air, because of course, the new science that is available. And when traveling by water, we don't necessarily travel with a traditional sailing vessel. We could be traveling via one of Leonardo's fantastical designs. Details on medicine. You can see just actually how much detail the designer has gone into. They clearly really enjoy their Italian history and have thoroughly enjoyed altering it and creating this new alternate reality. Scholarship, law and crime. This would make the basis of a really good TV series. Vice within Florence, the church and faith, and then other religions. So we've had a good, we're up to page 67. This is all setting, it's all giving you all the background to get yourself into the frame of mind of what Florence and Italy is like in this alternate reality. It's a good read, really is. So we're now getting a little bit of detail on actually what you need for playing the game. And here we go. Gran Meccanismo uses Graham Spearing's tripod game engine. Tripod is traits in pools of dice. A system designed for fun, descriptive, and creative narrative-driven play. This game uses descriptive phrases, traits, and applies them directly to play by giving each phrase a value, which is converted into a number of six-sided dice that you throw when resolving challenges. The game rules are a refinement of an early edition called Wordplay. So, we get a brief introduction as far as the basics on how the game plays, and then we jump into actually creating a character. Now, I went through this a couple of days ago and created my character. And as I've just described, essentially you use a phrase and you allocate a number of dice to that particular phrase. The character itself have three main attributes, which is body, mind, and soul. Everything else is defined by the traits which are allocated under those. And the instructions. Let's just... I want to make sure I get this right. So it goes through, gives us a summary, but then when we get to creating your character, it suggests that first of all, create a concept. So imagine who your character is. This has been no sort of picking any archetypes or anything like that, just create a concept of a character, the type that you want to play. And it gives an example here. A Venetian naval captain, an art collector who hides his ruthless greed behind an extravagantly courteous manner. Or maybe, what do we have? An absent-minded scholar whose mathematical skill has led her to be employed as a cartographer by the Florentine government. So, simple description. There we have a table here for suggesting various names that would be appropriate. We select an age. And then attributes. So I say mind, body, and soul. Body represents physical strength, endurance, and speed. Mind represents intellect, knowledge, and understanding. Soul represents sociability, resilience, emotional intelligence, and spirituality. And so, here we go. Starter player characters have a total of 9 points to spend across their attributes. Attributes can have a maximum value of 5 to start with, and a minimum of 1. Assume that a 2 means the attribute is a low to average level. Characters become more experienced, they will have the opportunity to increase their values of their attributes. Alright, so that's the first part you do. I've got to distribute 9 points across 3 categories: body, mind, and soul. We then get into the traits section, and it does talk about archetypes that we'll go into a little bit of detail in a bit. And you can essentially select an archetype if it would fit with kind of the concept that you are creating. But I kind of took the archetypes as a little bit more as an example of what a character might be like, because this next section, this narrative, is essentially, it says you start with your concept and your description. Well, we've kind of already done that. And then we have 15 traits, at least 2 in each of body, mind, and soul, with at least 1 being a relationship. And these traits are then scored with 1 trait starting at 4D, 5 traits start at 3D, 5 traits start at 2D, and 4 traits start at 1D. And it gives a few examples. Say body traits: enduring limp, good with my hands, sharp knife, sleekly elegant. Mind traits: conceal feelings, nose Florentine, shrewd banker. So as you can see, these are just little snippets of descriptions that can be used during play. So say, for example, if you are having an interaction with somebody that dealt with accountancy, yes, then you could use your shrewd banker skill because it's valid in that sort of context, and you would have 4D to roll against that particular challenge. So these traits can actually be pretty broad, you know, and there's nothing within the actual game that says these are the traits you pick from, because it's very open to the player and the games master, the guide, as to what those traits are. And certainly there are other games that we've looked at that use a kind of word system as far as skills or traits, however you want to describe them, and typically there are 20, 30, 40 pages broken down of all of these traits that you can possibly select from. And this game doesn't have that, because it gives the player and the GM the freedom to create their own. But for me, I found that actually quite difficult, because I had 100% freedom and I didn't quite know where to start. And so I started looking at the archetypes that the game suggests to try and get some ideas. So we got the artificer, the artisan, the artist, the banker, the bravo, the doctor, the entertainer, the farmer, the merchant, the ne'er-do-well? Ne'er-do-well? Essentially the thief and the con artist. The nobleman, the noblewoman, the priest, the rabble-rouser, the sailor, the scholar, the soldier, the spy, and the woodsman, and the workman. Is that it? That is it. So each one of these, let's take a look at... I'm going to take a look at the noble woman, just to give a little bit of an idea. So we get an introduction as far as what the noblewoman archetype, the character might be like. It then gives some examples on body traits. So I'll list these off. Elegant manner, formal dance, a horse rider, a talented singer, or plays an instrument, or some other womanly accomplishment. Mind traits, domestic manager, etiquette, noble entertainment, observant. Soul traits, relationship to father or husband, sense of duty. So any of these sort of fit within that character, but of course you don't have to go with these, you can create your own. But the character I wanted to create, it didn't fit into those traits, nor did it fit into any of the others. And initially I started pulling traits from different characters, because once I realized, well, I can kind of do whatever I want because I have that freedom. I've just got to keep within those guidelines as far as what my values are. 1 trait at 4D, 5 traits at 3D, 5 traits at 2D, 4 traits at 1D. We'll come back to it in a second, but we had goals to create. We also had to work out our wealth, and it did detail that we should have a flaw, a character flaw. I did see it. Yes, here we go. Something that hopefully your character can overcome during the course of an adventure. So hopefully I've got this set up. Let me show you the character that I created for the game. And hopefully I have all this right. Here we go. There we go. So what did I do? I created Edzia Auditoria, who is a noblewoman stroke assassin. And she does live in Florence. And we have a number of traits within my body, mind, and soul that hopefully do convey her character. So her concept is a noblewoman by day and assassin by night. Balances the complexities of Renaissance life with her covert missions for the Assassin Brotherhood. Agile and deadly with hidden blades, she seeks vengeance for her lover's death while grappling with guilt and the clash between her noble upbringing and violent duties. Of course, I've kind of done an alternate version of Ezio from the Assassin's Creed video games. But I wanted this a little bit kind of like the duality of the Bruce Wayne Batman character, where she is part of the aristocracy during the day and bound by those rules, but at night she breaks the rules and seeks to discover who killed her lover and avenge their death, but all the while trying to not get married off, as is what might be expected of her during that time. Now, as I say, I did create my own version initially, and it didn't feel quite right. I was having difficulty with it. I couldn't quite put my concepts, my trait concepts together. And then I turned to my PC and I got onto ChatGPT. And ultimately, I just told ChatGPT what was required to create up a character. and based it as a female version of Ezio from the Assassin's Creed games. And it was fantastic. It really did help put together and help me visualize the traits that I would need for this character. And it provided the creative input that I needed. So I would certainly say that for this type of game, ChatGTP is a fantastic resource to use, given this narrative nature of it. So if you guys have played the game, or tell me what you think, how you put together your characters, and if you find using AI helps you in that regard. I'd love to find out what you think. All right, let's go back to the book. So then, where are we up to? Also, what type of character might you play as? Do leave a comment in the chat. I kind of try to do two characters in one. An assassin and a noble woman. What might you play as? So we have a variety of different archetypes you can take a look at. It then details our origins. As I say, I set my character to come from Florence, but you have all of the other major cities in Italy to choose from. And then we get to the actual rules of the game. At the core of Gran Meccanismo system are challenges and their outcomes. Most of the time, especially when player characters are engaging in essentially mundane or risk-free activities with no real jeopardy to speak of, no need to roll the dice. So basically, here we go, an example of a challenge. So can your soldier face down the rioting mob and avoid a bloodbath? Key moments of uncertainty in the game, moments of tension when the outcome really matters. So this is where a challenge would happen. And ultimately, what you basically do is the guide is going to set a number of successes required in an actual challenge. So we set the difficulty. So an easy task has a difficulty of 3. Then for players' characters' relevant traits, success is automatic. So easy tests, difficulty of 3, 2 successes needed. Routine, difficulty of 6, 4 successes needed. Challenging, 6 successes. Formidable, 8 successes. And legendary, 10 successes. What you need to do on your dice, I just want to double check on this, because again this is interesting. It gives you the ratio probability of how many successes you might get depending on how many dice you roll. And this is where you can have huge handfuls of dice to roll. But an actual success, have I gone past it? Hello, Roger. Thanks for joining us. How are you? Just trying to find what my success needs to be. I'm sure it's 5 and a 6 on a d6. And I did have it earlier. Set the difficulty. build your dice pool. So use your relevant attributes. Use any useful equipment. We have our pool of dice. Ah, here we go. Roll the dice and see who wins. Okay, so basically, build up your dice from your attributes. Support it. So relevant attribute, one supporting trait, any useful equipment. If you can use your goal, then that can add dice. If there's a scene trait that might be to your advantage, say for example, if you were trying to sneak along an alleyway and avoid a guard, and you're doing this at night time, then that is a scene trait. It's going to give you a bonus. It's going to give you an extra dice because you're doing it at night. But if you're doing it at the day, it'd possibly be a negative, wouldn't it? So you're going to have a whole host of dice to throw. When you do throw them, each dice showing a 6 counts as 2 successes. Each die showing a 4 or 5 counts as 1. Each die showing a 1, 2 or 3 is no successes. And we do love throwing large clumps of dice together, don't we? So that's going to be a lot of fun. And we do get a nice little description which gives us an idea. We've got a character here who is trying to climb St. Mark's bell tower in Venice. Yeah, so he's basically saying he's got a total of 5 dice in his pool. Player calls out a scene trait of rough brick wall. So he's describing the tower and he's using it to his advantage, which the guide gives him 1 die for. Creates and declares a personal goal. Get to the top of this damn tower. The guide gives a goal value of 1 die. Okay. So he now has 7 die. But the wall has a difficulty of 7D. Because... is it... it's going to be a sort of challenging test, isn't it? So the guy decides to use 6 dice from the difficulty to generate 4 automatic successes and to roll 1 die for some variability. And so you're just comparing your character's successes against that of the actual challenge. So it's relatively easy as far as the mechanics are concerned. It's the fun of the game, of course, is using those traits to best effect and creating them in the first place. We got details then on different kinds of challenges, of course, combat, debates, seductions, and persuasions. Goes into more detail on combat, on healing, nudges, give players extra edge to influence the outcome of challenges. You start with 3. We talked a little bit about the goals. If you declare a goal before you roll the dice, you get bonus dice equal to the value of the goal. The bonus can be used for only 1 roll. I had a couple of goals in regards to trying to find who the killer of my lover was. So if that was relevant in that particular scene, I could roll those dice in addition. Wealth and equipment. And then we start getting a little bit of details then on the types of machinery, mechanisms that might be available. And then of course we get details then on how to improve our characters as they advance through various scenarios. So at the end of each game session, each player character gains a minor advancement. So we can replace a trait with a new one, remove a doubt trait from a goal, delete a trait, add an extra nudge for the next session. And then we start getting more details to help the guide as far as creating the game itself. So we're up to page 164 then in essentially the player's guide aspect. Introducing animals. But we got did I see prototype clockwork soldier? Different challenges and combat. And then going into actually running the game itself. And that pretty much brings us to the end. We have a little bit of appendices with some tables, and then we have our character sheet. And that's it. So, overall, I certainly enjoyed going through the book and reading all of the history. I found that really good. Because I like it, because, as I say, I talked about watching that Borgia's TV show. I can imagine the types of how this game might be in that setting. I also played Assassin's Creed 2 back in the day, and so again, I can imagine how this game might play out. But I did find, for me personally, creating a character was challenging because of the freedom that the game does provide. And I think I probably need to spend a little bit more time experimenting with that so that I understand it better. It's just because it's a different system to me. Whereas other games, you're pretty much just choosing from what is available in some kind of list. This gave complete freedom of choice, and that actually was quite overwhelming. But thankfully, working with a little bit of technology did help for me to get to a point where I was happy with the character I created. I think having big handfuls of dice to throw, that's good fun. I like stuff like that. So this is certainly a game that I am going to sit down and take a look at a deeper level. But initially, yeah, I'm excited about it. I think the setting is definitely unique. I haven't seen any other role-playing games in this time period and this sort of alternate reality. So I think there's a lot of fun to be had there. So there you go. That is a first look at Gran Meccanismo from Osprey Games, Clockpunk role-playing in Da Vinci's Florence. Again, thank you so much to Osprey Games for providing the copy for tonight for us to take a look through. So next week we're going to have actually 3 live shows, focusing in on a game that we've looked at previously. We are going to be returning to the Forbidden Lands from Free League Publishing. We'll be taking a look at a couple of their campaign modules and their Book of Beasts bestiary. This is a game that I've been having a lot of fun with, and I think you guys are going to enjoy it as well. So we will be doing live shows Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday next week from 7 p.m. Hopefully you'll be able to join me for those. So that's the plan. Thank you very much for you joining me this evening. Hope you have a fantastic weekend. But until next time, bye for now.